All right, so today you can see I'm still in the middle of the project of transforming this garage. Still don't have anything on this wall, but I did get a customer drop off a project today that we want to go ahead and get done for him. This is a rear bumper for a mod sled that he's building, but he has cut down the ends. He wants this powder coated red. So we're gonna go ahead and do that for him. I know I haven't really went over any of my powder coating stuff, but you'll get your first look at it today. So let's get to it. So I'm gonna start sandblasting this. Unfortunately, I don't have a good camera set up for sandblasting yet. That's something I'm gonna work towards as I get better at this stuff. But I figure watching me sandblast is kind of boring anyway, so I'll be back with the finished product. All right, so we got it all blasted. Now we're just gonna shoot some color. The color he chose, Super Mirror Red from Columbia Coatings. We're gonna get this thing hung up. We're gonna get the gun loaded up with red, and we're gonna be good to go. When I'm hanging my parts, I like to use stainless steel safety wire. This stuff works pretty good, it's pretty strong. I also like to hang it a little loose, just so it doesn't touch the piece, so I can get the powder in all the spots it needs to be. Typically I'm using a booth when I'm powder coating, but I have torn my booth apart. As we're doing this garage transformation here, everything's kind of all discombobulated. So we're gonna use what we have right now, the way I used to do it way back in the day, where I just sprayed the powder, it went all over the floor, and you just clean it up afterwards. So let's get to it. So I've got my stainless steel wire, and I've been playing with this for a minute to try to figure out how to get this thing to hang as even and level as possible so the wire's not touching it. And the best thing I've come up with is to run this wire all the way through and wrap it around and make like a big circle like this, holding it up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done. We're gonna see how that looks and we're gonna get going. So we did in fact have to get a little bit creative with this one. So you can see right here, I do have it hung up. There's a bit of a gap between the wire and the bumper there. So we're gonna go ahead and load the gun up and get some color on this thing. All right, so I do have the gun loaded with that Super Mirror Red from Columbia Coatings. This is a single stage powder coat, meaning I spray it on the piece, it goes in the oven, it bakes to full cure, you pull it out, it's done. So we're just gonna leave it at that for now. There are gonna be a lot of powder coat videos as I get more, but either way, the gun we are using is a Cool Coat Hyper Smooth 02. This is a great gun. It is like the intermediate level for pricing, intermediate to low, because obviously some of these guns get wicked ridiculous on pricing. But either way, I do have the basic, they call it. That just means it has the fluidizing mini hopper that goes on the gun. I do have the setup for the fluidizing hopper, the large one. I think it's a pound, or I think you can get a 5 pound as well. I don't powder coat anything large enough that ever needs that. This cup is all I ever really use. As far as what I'm running for kV for this coating, which is kilovolts, I run right in the middle of the road on a single stage for kV, and I run about 5 PSI. That is a little low, but you kind of just go by feel, and it is a lot about preference. So that is what this is. Also, the tip on this gun, they do have a couple tips, but I do like this tip. This is a flat surface tip. You watch a lot of the guys on YouTube that are using a Hyper Smooth, everything they powder coat is with this flat surface tip. This thing seems to do really well on everything. So I got to get my respirator and we'll get to spraying this. Okay, so you may not need a face covering for COVID-19 as it is 2024 now, but I would highly recommend it for powder coating, as this stuff can be very hazardous to your health. It is like the consistency of flour. It can build up in your respiratory system, and it doesn't sound fun to me, so I'll stick to wearing mine. Like I said, I do like that pressure low, so you are gonna see like a little, it's just gonna be kind of puffing out of there. I like to keep that cloud rolling, and I like to keep the point of the gun moving. I'm looking for an even coat throughout before we put this in the oven. Okay, so right off the bat, the first thing I notice is right down in these tight corners, I have what they call a Faraday cage. What's happening is the electrical charge that's charged on this piece is jumping from side to side, and it's making like an electromagnetic field there that won't let the powder coat penetrate that. So the easiest thing to do, there's two things you can do to fix that. The first thing you can do is either turn up the air pressure and down the kilovolts. I tend to do them both one and the same. So if I'm turning down the kilovolts, I want the air pressure to go up. I am going to use a lot more powder with the air pressure up. but to get your nice uniform coating, sometimes that's what it takes. Okay, so I've turned the air pressure up to about 10 PSI and I've turned the KV down to about 25. So let's see if that will help me get what I need done here on this tight corner here. And then we're gonna check the whole piece and then into the oven. Okay, so my quick adjustment actually worked perfectly there. So, yeah, that's something you're gonna learn with whatever gun you're using. Obviously, I've been using this gun for a couple years now, so I know the little quirks like that I have to work around. But otherwise, this piece looks really nice with the coating I have on it. I'm just checking it over, making sure. Everything looks really good on this piece. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna get this thing in the oven. Okay, so as this video is kind of the introduction of powder coating on my channel, I do want to talk a little bit about my oven. So my oven is home built. It's not perfect. You can see it's the door's a little downhill here, but not to be worried because this oven is actually going to get revamped on this channel. I've had plans for about a year now to rebuild this oven. Basically not scrap it, but basically scrap it. I want to take it apart, use the parts that I can from it, and build an oven that's a little bit different size. So there's a couple problems that I have with this one. I have this one raised up off the floor. It has its own floor built in it. While that is great for insulation, I don't have a rolling rack that I can put my parts on, spray them, slide it in, be done. That's not that tough with a job like this, to just grab the part and throw it in there. But when you get big stuff like back racks for trucks or front bumpers or anything like that, I can't fit a front bumper in this oven anyways. But I have had people ask me to do them. But running boards for regular cab pickup trucks, same thing. They're so awkward and heavy. Now you might think, oh, a running board for a truck's not that heavy. Sure, it's not that heavy when you can muscle it, but when you have to hold it from a cable and hang it in there without touching the coating as it goes in, it gets pretty heavy because you're leaning like this or you're trying to balance it like this. So there's all kinds of things that make that kind of just doesn't work as well as it should. So that's the biggest thing, is the floor. I do want to get this down on the floor and build a rack. I also want to move it. It's not in the best spot. Either way, the other part I kind of touched on there, it needs to be a little bit bigger. I've had people ask me to do some stuff that I just don't have the space in the oven to do. And I'm talking, we're less than 6 inches of room difference of what we need. So this is 4x4x6. I thought when I built this oven originally, it would be the perfect size, but I mean, it does everything I want to do. I like dirt bikes, four-wheelers, snowmobiles, side-by-sides. It does all my parts. But, you know, on the business side of it, trying to make some money doing it, the oven does need to be a little bit bigger. Now for the heating source, to talk more about the oven specifically that we're using, the heating source is propane. Now that is not common for an oven this size. So years ago, I did a lot of research. I found a guy that was powering, there's many guys doing it now, powering these ovens off of a salamander heater. So as you can see right down here in the corner, there is a Mr. Heater 125,000 BTU salamander heater that powers this. So these guys have came up with a way to use an Inkbird PIDD controller, which works just as it should, as cheap as it is. It works great. So basically what it does is I can set the temperature. There's a thermocouple inside the oven. And then I use an electronic propane solenoid down at the heater that will kick the propane on whenever the oven calls for power. So I basically have the wiring set up like it's electric, but all that the electric is powering is that propane solenoid. It's actually powering an outlet that the propane solenoid's plugged into, because propane solenoid is 12 volt. But either way, it all works, and it works great. It's able to regulate the temperature where I need it all the time. And on top of that, this thing gets up to temperature in about 4 minutes. So I can heat soak the oven in it takes about 10 minutes before I do a job to heat soak the oven. Then I know that that's a roundabout that I've come to be normal every time I'm powder coating. Now, colder months in the winter, it's pretty cold here in New York, so it might take 12 or 13. But either way, 10 minutes to heat soak the oven. Sometimes I pre-bake my parts, sometimes I don't, depends on how clean of the metal they are. And I kind of have a rule of thumb on what I know needs outgassing and what doesn't. Aluminum does need outgassing, but things like bumpers and stuff, it's usually pretty good, clean aluminum. So I never really have an issue with bumpers doing that, but wheels always need outgas, no matter what. I've had a lot of issues with wheels in the past. So anyways, 4x4x6, it is a home built oven, rock wool insulation, those metal 2x4 studs that you get at Lowe's that are like $2 a piece, whatever they are, rivets, and sheet metal. The most expensive part of this oven, guys, is the sheet metal. It's ridiculous. You would never think it, but it is crazy. I use a piano hinge on the side to hinge the door. Again, the door's not square because I had issues when I built it. I didn't really have a lot of space when I built it. So not to worry, again, this is gonna be rebuilt, so it's gonna be a lot nicer. The seal I use around the door, doesn't really seal, but it's just some exhaust wrap folded in half, riveted in. It works, kinda. The door shuts really tight though, so I mean, I can put my hand next to it and I don't feel a bunch of heat blowing out. More information about propane ovens though, I can go into that more in a video if you guys want, but I kind of screwed up when I did mine. So if you're running a propane salamander oven, it obviously has a CFM fan that's blowing through, so I don't know what the CFM on the fan is, but you get an airflow, like a fan that blows through, where an electric oven doesn't have that. It's just heating an area. So with that fan having to blow through, you do need a vent so that air can blow through and out, because you just continue to pressurize the oven. If you didn't, now obviously if it was sealed, you really would, and eventually your fan would screw up and everything. Now, a lot of people say when you're building these ovens that your vent needs to be the same size as your inlet. While I do agree with that, you do lose a lot of heat doing that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but this is a 8-inch inlet, I believe. I'd have to go back. It's been 3 years since I built this thing. But the exit is just a dryer vent. I think it's 3 or 4 inches, something like that. And it's got a flap on it. You can see I have a bolt in it right there with a little stop nut. That's actually so it doesn't open all the way. Because the reason why I did that is when you fire it up, it'll flip that open really quick. And then what I noticed is it would blow a bunch of heat out. And I noticed that it would run a lot more with that, not like that. But that's kind of my own thing that I did. Also, where I screwed up on this vent should really be down here, because hot air rises, cold air sinks. Didn't think about it when I built it, but that would be better placed on the opposite side of the oven, down low. So when we rebuild this oven, we will do that. Anyways, enough talking. I'm gonna get this thing fired up, put you guys on time lapse so you guys can watch the oven do its thing. And when we come back, we'll have a nice coated part. All right, so at this point, the oven's run its full cycle here, and we should have a beautifully baked part on the other side. So let's check it out. Nice and warm in here. Look at that beautiful red, super mirror red. Look at that, looks fantastic. So now we're gonna let that cool, and I'll be right back. All right, so today's video is a little bit different than the first 2 videos that I uploaded. With the renovation going on in the garage, it's kind of hard to do some of the PowerSports stuff, but we did manage to get this rear bumper done for Rick in Columbia Coatings Super Mirror Red. It looks fantastic. I think he's gonna be super excited as well. And Rick, if you ever see this video, thank you for your business. I really appreciate it. If this is the type of content that you like to see, the PowerSports driven stuff, the powder coating, maybe expanding that powder coat oven like I talked about earlier in the video, I definitely encourage you to smash the subscribe button and the like button. I really do appreciate all your support, and thank you for watching.